Iran built the world's largest shopping mall and opened it the year its currency lost 90% of its value. That's not a contradiction. It's the actual story of Iranian infrastructure under sanctions. One country, 11 major infrastructure projects, 6 years of maximum pressure sanctions. Some are genuine engineering wins. Some are constraint-driven workarounds the sanctions themselves created. Some are symbolic showcases, and one project nobody is talking about is the most analytically interesting of all. The headlines say Iran shocked the world. That framing skips the math. By the end of this video, you and I will have the math. 2 facts about Iran from the same year. The country opened the world's largest shopping mall in 2018, built by 25,000 workers, holding a Guinness World Record for non-stop concrete pouring. The same year, the Iranian rial began a 6-year collapse that would erase roughly 90% of household purchasing power. Both things are true, and that's what makes the Iranian infrastructure story analytically interesting. Not the viral version where everything's a triumph, and not the dismissive version where nothing works. 11 projects, 4 categories. The math varies by project. By the end, we'll have the names that go in each quadrant and the engineering question the headlines never quite get to. What does isolation actually build, and what does it not? Start with what Iran builds when it builds big. Iran Mall sits next to Chitgar Lake in northwest Tehran, nearly 2 million square meters across 7 floors, 12 cinemas, including IMAX, an Olympic-size ice rink, a 2,000-seat theater, a library with 45,000 books and manuscripts, a mirror hall built from 38 million handcrafted pieces. 25,000 workers built it. Guinness World Records certified its concrete pour run as the longest in history. By total built-up area, it is the largest mall on Earth. Now the part the showcase reels skip. Iran Mall opened in 2018, the same year the Iranian rial began its second major collapse following the United States withdrawal from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Between 2018 and 2025, the rial lost roughly 90% of its value against the dollar. Household consumption purchasing power, measured by the World Bank, dropped 30 to 50% in real terms. The world's largest mall by area opened into the world's most shrunken consumer market by purchasing power. Both numbers are real. They describe the same building. Now the other side of the architecture story. The Tabiat Bridge in Tehran, 270 meters long, 3 levels of pedestrian space, cafes, viewing platforms, held up by 3 massive columns shaped like trees with branches spreading outward. Designed to survive earthquakes above magnitude 7 and to last 100 years. It was designed by a 26-year-old Iranian architect named Layla Aragian, her first major project. In 2016, the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, one of the most prestigious architecture awards on the planet, Praise gave it the prize. The jury called it, and I quote, "a destination in itself, not just a connector. I wanted to design a bridge people don't cross. A place, not a path." Aragian's framing, design a bridge people stop on, not cross. So here's the first piece of math. Iran can build at world record scale, Iran Mall, and at world-class design, Tabiat Bridge. Both are real. Neither is symbolic, and the gap between them and what regular Iranians can afford or experience day to day is also real. Iran Mall is the world's largest buy area. It opened into the most shrunken consumer market by purchasing power. Both numbers describe the same building. Architecture is one quadrant. Now the bigger one, the transportation. Iran's rail and metro infrastructure is one of the largest in the Middle East. 3 numbers tell the scale. 15,000 kilometers of national rail, 33 million tons of freight, and 29 million passengers per year. Tehran Metro, with 310 kilometers of track, more than 160 stations, over 3 million daily passengers. Plans extend that to 500 kilometers and 330 stations across 11 lines by 2040. And the rail history is genuinely deep. The Trans-Iranian Railway, built between 1927 and 1938, crossed 2 mountain ranges and required 174 bridges and 224 tunnels. UNESCO inscribed it in 2021 Iran has been building rail infrastructure for nearly a century. On October 2025, Tehran opened a station called Maryam-e-Moghaddas, Holy Mary in Persian. The decoration blends Christian iconography with Persian geometric design, vaulted arches, a decorated dome, a relief sculpture of Christ over the platform. In a country that is a self-described Islamic republic, a public transit station dedicated to the Mother of Jesus Christ is a cultural coexistence signal worth pausing on. The construction reportedly took 10 years. The photos went viral the week they appeared. The Fadak Express, Iran's luxury overnight train, runs Tehran to Mashhad and to other major cities. Coaches refurbished under Swiss engineering supervision. 5 service classes and meals included in the ticket. The interiors compete with European long-distance rail products on aesthetics. It costs about the same as a domestic flight. And then there's the auto industry. Iran Khodro, IKCO, founded 1962. At its peak around 2017, Iran ranked 13th globally in vehicle production. Production peaked above 1.3 million vehicles a year. The Samand became Iran's national car, exported to Venezuela, Belarus, Azerbaijan. The Runa design was adopted in Tunisia. In 2024, IKCO unveiled the Ria, including an electric version. But the trajectory tells more. Iranian total auto production dropped from that 1.3 million peak to around 600 to 800,000 by 2022 under sanctions, recovering toward 1 million by 2024. Iran's OICA ranking has slipped from 13th to roughly 17th to 19th. And then there's the question the showcase reels skip. International crash test agencies have rated several Iranian export models at 0 or 1 star for adult occupant safety. Latin NCAP tested the Saturno, the Samand export variant, and gave it a 0-star adult occupant protection rating. Iran moves 3 million daily metro passengers. It builds its own trains, certified to European safety standards as of 2022. It opened a metro station dedicated to the Mother of Jesus Christ in 2025. And it exports cars with crash test scores that explain why some markets accept them and others won't. Iran moves 3 million daily passengers and builds its own trains. It also exports cars with safety scores that explain why some markets still take them and others won't. Transportation is one piece. The bigger one, and where the math gets harder, is water. Iran's water engineering portfolio is the country's most globally significant infrastructure achievement. The numbers are real. 600-plus dams across the country. Combined storage approaches 52 billion cubic meters. During the late 20th century, Iran ranked among the world's top 3 dam-building nations. The Karkheh Dam, the largest in the Middle East, generates electricity, irrigates farmland, and controls billions of cubic meters of water, built largely with Iranian engineering under sanctions. And then there's the Inter-Basin Transfer Project. The Hope Transfer Line pulls water from the Persian Gulf and Sea of Oman through desalination plants at Bandar Abbas, then sends it through 3,700 kilometers of pipelines, longer than the distance from London to Cairo to 17 drought-hit interior provinces. The main desalination hub produces 1.5 million cubic meters of fresh water per day. Plans extend the network to 45 million people across nearly 50 plants. The Keshem Island plant, built when sanctions blocked imports of key components, was finished with domestically manufactured parts. All of that is real, and here's what the showcase reels never mention. Iran's dam-building program responded to a real challenge, but it also created bigger problems: groundwater depletion, downstream wetland collapse, and water redistribution that made some droughts worse. Kaveh Madani, Iran's former deputy head of the Department of Environment, now director at the UN University Institute for Water, calls the 600 dam program a partial solution that created bigger problems. Issa Kalantari, former Iranian vice president, went further. He called water mismanagement Iran's most serious challenge. More serious, he said publicly, than any external threat the country faces. The World Resources Institute Aqueduct Index ranks Iran among the world's top 5 most water-stressed countries. Approximately 13 million urban Iranians experienced intermittent water rationing during the 2023 drought. The Lake Urmia ecosystem, once the largest saltwater lake in the Middle East, has lost more than 80% of its surface area, in part because upstream dams divert tributaries. The Hamoun wetlands on the Afghan border have suffered comparable collapse. So here's the quadrant. The dams are real. The desalination network is real. The 3,700-kilometer pipeline is real engineering. And the country's own former water minister, not a foreign critic, calls the underlying program a partial solution that created bigger problems. Iran built 600 dams and a 3,700-kilometer pipeline to engineer around its water problem. The country's own former water minister says the problem is the engineering itself. Water is the hardest quadrant. Energy is the most politicized one. Iran's civilian nuclear program centers on one operational reactor, Bushehr 1, a 1,000-megawatt pressurized water reactor. The project history is its own film. Construction started in 1975 with Germany's Siemens Kraftwerk Union as the original contractor. Abandoned after the 1979 revolution. Damaged in the Iran-Iraq War during the 1980s. Restarted under a Russian Rosatom contract in 1995. Grid-connected 2011. Commercial operation began 2013. Cumulative generation since 2013 approaches 80 terawatt-hours per IAEA records. Bushehr 2 and Bushehr 3 are under Russian construction. Iran's stated long-term target is 20,000 megawatts of nuclear capacity by 2041. One number puts Bushehr in context. Iran's annual electricity demand exceeds 320 terawatt-hours. Bushehr currently supplies roughly 5.5 terawatt-hours per year. That's about 1.7% of total demand. The 2041 20,000 megawatt target would close that gap substantially if construction stays on schedule, which Iran's nuclear construction track record makes uncertain. The other geopolitical infrastructure project is the Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline, also called the Peace Pipeline. Iran completed its 1,100-kilometer section by 2012. Pakistan's 781-kilometer section remains incomplete more than a decade later. The simple story is that United States sanctions, threats, blocked construction. The fuller story is more layered. India withdrew from the original trilateral project in 2009 over price and security disputes. Pakistan's own internal financing fell apart multiple times. Pakistan signed a 15-year liquefied natural gas import deal with Qatar in 2015 that reduced the urgency of the pipeline. And U.S. sanctions, threats, the Iran Sanctions Act, plus the CAATSA framework added another layer of risk for any country or company financing Pakistan's section. Iran built its half. Pakistan didn't build its half. Both are facts. The reasons Pakistan didn't are several, and pretending they reduced to a single villain is the partisan version of the story. The Peace Pipeline is half-built. The half that's stuck isn't stuck for one reason and pretending it is the partisan version of the story. So that's 4 quadrants of Iranian infrastructure: architecture, transportation, water, energy, real engineering in each, real critique in each, real complexity that doesn't fit a viral title. Which leaves the synthesis. What does this all add up to? So here's what 11 Iranian infrastructure projects actually look like when you sort them by the math instead of the marketing. Real engineering wins. The Tabiat Bridge won the Aga Khan Award. Tehran Metro has 310 kilometers of operational track, the largest metro network in the Middle East. The Trans-Iranian Railway, UNESCO World Heritage. The 600 dam engineering itself, separate from the policy critique. Bushehr operational nuclear power, a verifiable achievement under decades of construction delay. Constraint-driven workarounds. The domestically built metro train completed 2022 sanctions forced indigenization that produced real industrial capacity. The Karkheh Island desalination plant finished with domestically manufactured parts because imports were blocked. IKCO's export markets: Venezuela, Belarus, Cuba, Tunisia, Cambodia. Economies aligned politically rather than chosen for trade efficiency. Iran's completion of its 1,100-kilometer IPI section on time and under sanctions. Each is real engineering. Each exists in this form because of constraints. Symbolic showcases. Iran Mall opened into a collapsing consumer market. Beautiful, record-setting, and economically questionable as a retail proposition for an Iran in the 2018 through 2025 sanctions environment. The Fadak Express. Luxury overnight rail serving a relatively narrow segment of Iranian travelers who can afford it. The Mariam-e-Magadah station. Architecturally striking. A cultural coexistence signal. Real. Beautiful. And not the same kind of thing as moving 3 million daily commuters. Substantial gaps the showcase reels never get to. The water management crisis. Top 5 globally for water stress? Iran's own former water minister calling it more serious than external threats. The currency collapse. Rial down 90% against $2018 to 2025. Household purchasing power down 30 to 50% in real terms. IKCO export crash test ratings, 0 to 1 star at Latin NCAP. The Iranian brain drains approximately 150,000 educated immigrants per year, per Iran's own National Migration Observatory. Bushehr's 1.7% electricity share against the 2041 20,000 megawatt stretch goal. Iran's economy under sanctions has developed real industrial depth, but it has also paid a price the headlines rarely quantify. Javad Salehi Isfahani at Brookings. Real industrial depth, real unmeasured cost. Sanctions force a specific kind of innovation in domestic capacity building, where imports would have been faster. Some of it produces real engineering. Some of it produces showcases. Batmang Helij at the Bourse and Bazaar Foundation. Sanctions force adaptation. Math varies by sector. Real engineering, real workarounds, real showcases, real gaps. All four exist in the same country at the same time. Isolation builds what it has to. It doesn't build what's optimal. The viral version of this story says Iran shocked the world with what it's building. The dismissive version says Iran can't build anything that lasts under sanctions. Both versions are stories. Neither version is the math. The math says Iran has built real engineering. Tabiat Bridge, Trans-Iranian Railway, Tehran Metro, hundreds of dams. It has built constraint-driven workarounds, domestic trains, domestic desalination parts, alternative export markets. It has built symbolic showcases. Iran Mall, the Mariam Station. And it has accumulated substantial gaps. Water mismanagement crisis, currency collapse, brain drain, auto safety ratings, the Bushehr scale versus target gap. Iran built more than the headlines admit, and less than the defenders claim. The truth in between is the engineering story. One thought to sit with. The same Iranian engineering workforce that built the metro train, the desalination plant, the bridge that won the Aga Khan Award. Iran's own National Migration Observatory tracks roughly 150,000 educated immigrants, leaving the country every year. The infrastructure portfolio is real, so is the human capital trajectory underneath it. If you've got a read on whether infrastructure under isolation is a model worth studying or a cautionary tale about opportunity cost, the math is in the comments. I'd rather see the engineering case than the partisan one. Isolation builds what it has to. It doesn't build what's optimal. That's the math the headlines skip. And it's the engineering story the marketing version can't tell.